I moved into a modest flat in a quiet part of town close to Lockhart, Texas, US after a tough breakup. I needed space, peace, and something new. The building was old but well kept. No loud neighbors, no parties. It was exactly what I needed. The only unusual thing, my neighbor across the hall, flat 2C, a man in his 40s, pale, clean-shaven, wore the same dark blue hoodie every day. I never got his name. He never spoke, but he watched, not in an obvious way, more like you'd catch him looking just as you turned, through the peephole, through a crack in the curtain, just watching. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe he was just socially awkward. We all have our quirks, right? But over the next few weeks, strange things began happening. It started small. My post started going missing. Parcels I'd been waiting for never arrived. I thought it was the courier messing up. Then I found one of the parcels opened and left behind the bins downstairs. A pair of shoes, not stolen, just dumped. The box was neatly torn open like someone had wanted to look inside, not steal. Then came the noise. Every night, around 2 a.m., I'd hear scraping sounds, like furniture being dragged across the floor. Then silence. Then the sound of pacing, back and forth, back and forth. One night it got so loud I decided to knock, just ask him politely to keep it down. I stood at his door, knocked once, then again. No answer. But I could hear him inside, just breathing, close to the door. I walked back unsettled. Next morning I found something odd stuck under my door, a photograph of me, taken from behind. I was walking down the street carrying groceries. No note, no context, just a photo. I was chilled to the bone. I went straight to the landlord. She looked concerned but explained he'd been living there for over 10 years, paid rent on time, no complaints. Bit of a loner, she said, but harmless. I wasn't so sure. A few days later, I installed a cheap, motion-triggered camera outside my door. I needed to know if I was being paranoid, or if something was actually going on. That night, I left it recording. The next morning, I checked the footage. My heart dropped. At 2:13 a.m., my neighbor stepped out. He crouched in front of my door and just sat there, staring directly at it for nearly 10 minutes, not moving, not doing anything, just watching. Then, he stood up, looked straight into the camera, and smiled. I reported it to the police. They came, took my statement, and paid him a visit. I could hear them through the wall, asking questions. He sounded calm, even confused. "No idea what he's talking about," he said. The police shrugged it off. Said unless he physically harmed me or entered my flat, they couldn't do much. Probably just a weirdo, they said. That night, I didn't sleep. I moved a chair in front of the door and kept a kitchen knife nearby just in case. Then, silence. For days. No noise. No pacing. No movement. It was almost peaceful again. Until one afternoon, I came home and noticed my flat smelled different. Like something faint. Chemical. Sharp. I checked every room. Everything was where I left it. Nothing missing. But something felt off. I opened the window to air it out. Later that evening, I noticed one of the screws on my lock was slightly loose. My stomach dropped. Had he been inside? I changed the lock that night, bought a proper deadbolt, upgraded the door camera. I even started keeping a hammer next to my bed. I knew I was spiraling, becoming paranoid, but I couldn't help it. I started keeping a journal of every strange occurrence, every sound. Every time I caught him glancing through the curtain, it helped me stay grounded. A week later, everything escalated. I came home from work to find my flat door wide open. Not broken, not kicked in, just unlocked. I rushed inside, heart pounding. Everything was still there, except one thing: the hammer I kept beside my bed. Gone. I ran, straight to the police station. This time, they took it seriously. They questioned him again, but he denied everything. No fingerprints, no proof. The footage from the door camera? Deleted. Someone had tampered with the SD card. They suggested I stay somewhere else for a few days. I stayed with a mate, but I couldn't rest. I returned a week later with 2 friends, ready to collect my stuff and find a new place. As we walked into the building, we saw his door wide open. A police notice stuck to it. The landlord approached us, eyes wide. "He's gone," she said. "Gone where?" I asked. "No idea. Left everything. Plates still in the sink. Fridge full. Just vanished. We filed a missing person report yesterday. We peeked into his flat, and that's when I saw it. Pinned on the wall across from his bed. Dozens of photographs. Of me, leaving the building, sleeping by the window, eating dinner, all taken from different angles, different times. And then, a photo of my bedroom, from inside. That was 2 months ago. They never found him. I moved to a new city, changed jobs, new number, knew everything. But some nights, when it's quiet, think about that smile into the camera and wonder if he's still watching, just waiting for the right time. When I moved into a modest flat in North London, I was seeking a fresh start. The area was quiet, the neighbors seemed friendly, and the rent was affordable. It was the kind of place where people nodded politely in the hallway, but largely kept to themselves. My upstairs neighbor, Mr. Patel, was an exception. A man in his mid-60s, he was always impeccably dressed and had a warm smile. Our initial interactions were brief, but pleasant. He introduced himself, offered assistance with my move, and even brought over a welcome gifter tin of homemade biscuits. At first, I appreciated his kindness. Living alone in a new city can be isolating, and his friendly demeanor was a comfort. However, as weeks passed, his attentiveness began to feel intrusive. One morning, as I was leaving for work, Mr. Patel called out from his window, "Running late today? You usually catch the 8:42 overground, don't you?" I paused, puzzled. I had never discussed my commute with him. "Yes, I am," I replied hesitantly. He chuckled. "Better hurry, or you'll miss it." I brushed it off as a coincidence, but similar incidents followed. He commented on my grocery shopping habits, noting when I switched brands. He mentioned my dog, Jasper, and his feeding times, even though I had never walked Jasper near his window. The most alarming moment came when I received a text from an unknown number. "Your parcel's been left with Mr. Patel, Amazon." I hadn't authorized any deliveries to him. When I confronted Mr. Patel, he smiled and said, "I noticed you order frequently. Thought I'd save you the trip downstairs." I thanked him, but unease settled in my stomach. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My laptop would be open when I was certain I had closed it. I received 2-factor authentication alerts for login attempts from nearby locations. I changed all my passwords and installed a security camera outside my door. One night, the camera captured footage that sent chills down my spine. At 3:11 a.m., Mr. Patel was outside my door, kneeling. He produced a key, unlocked the door, slipped inside, and emerged 2 minutes later, locking the door behind him. I was horrified. I contacted the police immediately. The police took my report seriously. They obtained a warrant and searched Mr. Patel's flat. What they found was disturbing. In a locked drawer, they discovered a folder containing printed screenshots of my emails, banking information, and social media messages. There were also CCTV stills of me in my living room, taken through a pinhole camera installed behind a vent. Mr. Patel had a background in IT security. He had used his skills to monitor my online activity, install surveillance equipment in my flat, and even clone my keys. He was arrested and charged with multiple counts of stalking, unlawful surveillance, and unauthorized access to personal data. The court proceedings were lengthy. Mr. Patel's defense argued that he was lonely and meant no harm. However, the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and issued a restraining order prohibiting any contact with me. I moved to a new flat in a different part of the city. The experience left me with a deep sense of violation and mistrust. I installed additional security measures and became more cautious about sharing personal information. It was April 2020, right at the peak of the global COVID-19 pandemic. The UK was in full lockdown. Schools were shut, pubs closed, and even corner shops had queues stretching around the block. People were hoarding toilet paper like it was gold, and hand sanitizer had become a currency of its own. Streets that were once busy with buses and bustling foot traffic now lay eerily silent. The air outside felt still, dead. I was working from home in my small flat in Birmingham, a modest one-bedroom place on the second floor of a 3-story building. Nothing fancy, but comfortable. The kind of place where neighbors barely knew each other, but still nodded politely in the hallway. Next door to me lived Mr. Alcott, a quiet man, maybe in his late 60s or early 70s, though I never asked. He was one of those old-fashioned types always, wore a buttoned-up cardigan, neatly parted grey hair, glasses perched low on his nose. He kept mostly to himself, always listening to the radio and doing crosswords in the communal garden. We exchanged pleasantries every now and then, morning, or stay safe, during the early days of the pandemic. Then came the man upstairs. He arrived late one evening in mid-April. I remember because I was on the phone with my sister when I heard the front door open. I peeked through the peephole and saw a tall manly in late 30s, perhaps carrying a duffel bag and a small backpack. No furniture, no bed frame, nothing. Just him. He didn't greet anyone. Didn't knock on the landlord's door downstairs. Just walked straight up the stairs like he belonged. I assumed he was a new tenant. Not that it was my business. But that's when the noises began. At first, it was normal. Footsteps during the day. Occasional late-night movement. Maybe he worked night shifts. Who was I to judge? But by the second week, I noticed a pattern. Around 2 a.m., like clockwork, I would hear a dragging sound. Not footsteps, not furniture shifting, but something heavy, being pulled slowly across the floor. It made my skin crawl. Once, I even banged on my ceiling with a broom handle. The sound stopped immediately. For a moment, I felt silly. Maybe it was pipes or the heating system, like the landlord had said when I brought it up. Old buildings have their quirks, he told me. Except this wasn't just some creaking beam. It was something else. I started paying closer attention. I kept a notebook next to my bed, jotting down the times I heard the dragging. 1:57 a.m., 2:03 a.m., 2:11 a.m. It didn't happen every night, but often enough. My sleep started to suffer. I was working remotely for an accounting firm, and deadlines were piling up, but all I could think about was the noise upstairs. Then one night, I heard voices, or rather, one voice, muffled, agitated, pacing back and forth. It sounded like the man was talking to himself, loudly. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone chilled me, frantic, unstable. I tiptoed to my kitchen to get a drink, and that's when I saw something. The man, standing at his window, perfectly still, just staring. I couldn't see his face clearly, but the silhouette alone was enough to send a cold rush down my spine. By early May, I realized something odd. I hadn't seen Mr. Alcott in days. No radio through his window. No crossword on the bench outside. His milk delivery was piling up at his doorstep. I mentioned it to the building manager, Graham, but he just shrugged. Maybe he's self-isolating. He is high risk after all. But something felt wrong. You know that gut feeling? The one you get when something is off, but you can't quite explain it. I had that. Every time I walked past his door, every time I heard the dragging noise. Then the smell started. At first I thought it was the bins. It was summer, and the council had reduced collection days due to the pandemic. But this smell, it was different. Like something rotting. Faint at first, but getting stronger by the day. I sprayed air fresheners in the corridor, left my windows open, lit candles. Nothing helped. On 18 May, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the non-emergency police line. I told them about the neighbor, the dragging noises, the missing old man. The smell. They promised to send someone over. That afternoon, the door to the upstairs flat was broken open. It was chaos after that. Sirens, police tape, forensics in white suits. I watched everything from my window. Heart pounding. I saw Graham, the building manager, step outside with a look I can only describe as haunted. Turns out, the man upstairs wasn't a tenant. He wasn't even on the lease. He'd met Mr. Alcott on one of those local Facebook community groups meant to help elderly people during lockdown. You know, the ones where neighbors offered to pick up groceries or prescriptions. He offered to bring shopping over. That's how he got inside. He never left. Police found Mr. Alcott's body beneath the floorboards in the upstairs flat, wrapped in plastic, hidden beneath loose boards, and covered with insulation and boxes. He'd been dead for at least 6 weeks. The man who had multiple aliases and no fixed address had been living in the flat ever since, wearing Mr. Alcott's clothes, using his bank card, even signed into his Netflix account. He ordered food deliveries daily, never left the building, and passed off as just another remote worker during the lockdown. No one questioned it. No one noticed. The dragging noises? He'd been rearranging Mr. Alcott's body, moving it from room to room, before finally getting to hide it under the floor. And the worst part? He lived directly above me, for 6 weeks. I heard the dragging. I smelt the decay. I knew something was wrong, but I did nothing. The police said if I hadn't called that day, the body would never have been found. Mr. Alcott had no family, no one to check on him. No funeral, just a forgotten name in a quiet building during a loud, chaotic world crisis. It's been 5 years since it happened, but I still flinch when I hear heavy footsteps above me. I moved out of that flat, of course. Couldn't sleep there anymore. Sometimes I think about Mr. Alcott's quiet smile, his crossword books, the little nod he always gave me when we passed each other in the garden. And I think about the man who took all that away. Ooh, also a funny thing. Now as that I have moved to a new flat in a different building, this strange thing happened last night. I heard dragging sounds again.